Well, first of all, thank you to the TG team, the Talking Galleries team, for inviting me and these guests to talk on this I think pretty crucial question: what do artists want from their galleries? We seem to hear a lot from. I mean, obviously, we hear a lot from galleries here. We hear a lot from collectors. We hear some from critics. But in general, and both within this Congress and outside of it, we don't really tend to ask artists a lot of questions about what they want from their galleries or what they want from the market or what they want from contemporary production. I think that's something we sort of clearly want to address here. That's the subject at hand. And for that, we're very lucky to have two very competitive, successful artists who've been around for quite a while, and Ed, who is sort of our resident polymath, dealer and writer and blogger, and our fair director, and a personality who is also pretty close to artists, who works with them, who talks to them on a one-to-one basis on equal terms, and for that reason, I think having Ed here is really sort of invaluable. I want to show about 4 or 5 slides first in a short presentation before we basically get into just talking, and hopefully talking in the most open way possible, meaning it's not about calling anyone out, obviously, but it is sort of about chasing as many ideas down whatever rabbit holes to find some productive answers to the question, what do artists want from their galleries? Oh, good. Okay, so we're up there. What I think what we want to do is really broach, this really large subject by way of an informal conversation of veterans, right? So like I said, whatever roads we choose to go down, they will all be treated like legitimate paths to valuable insight. The idea is that virtually nothing regarding the issue of galleries and what artists want from them should be off the table. After this small introduction, I'll be looking to ask each of you what you think artists want from their dealers. Has that changed in the last few decades, and if so, how? Are art galleries, in fact, necessary to artists or to the business of selling art? Is there an existing taxonomy for dealers? And if one exists, what does it look like? Is it guerrilla curator, artist dealer, commercial dealer, or is it something that Ed mentioned this morning, more like emerging dealer, mid-tier dealer, and top-end dealer? Are these classifications even useful for artists? Why and why not? Jordi and Rainier, I'd love for you to speak specifically to the kind of dealers you've worked with. You can name names or choose not to. It's up to you. It'll be juicier if you do. If you don't, certainly we'd all sort of respect your wish for confidentiality. But also sort of talk about how they differ geographically and in terms of the marketplace. It's not all about the market. Often it's also about geography, right? Even geography within a given country. I'm assuming that the gallery in Valencia and the gallery in Madrid might act slightly differently, or at least the one in Donostia and the one in Madrid. Certainly one in Chicago acts very differently from one in New York City, in my experience. Is there an ideal type of dealer? Ed, I'd love for you to take some of your vast expertise as a dealer and as an art world conversationalist and speak to the plight of artists and dealers that may not necessarily get artists. There is a great deal of terrific communication going on between artists and dealers all the time, but often one has the sense that there is a short circuit in that conversation, or in those conversations, plural. Taking off from a 2009 blog compendium of artist-centric entries that you lassoed under advice for artists seeking gallery representation, I'd like you to revisit some of your conclusions. From where you're sitting, what are the advantages to an artist of working with a gallery, and how can galleries maximize those advantages? Also, I'd like very much for us to consider the sorts of experiments in social practice, and we can clarify that term when we come to it, socially engaged art, that are coming up now in response to the growing financialization of the art world. Is there a place for those kinds of activities in gallery making? Or put another way, with a specific example, can an art gallery like, say, Rick Lowe's project Row Housing in Houston, Texas, or Hirshhorn's Gramsci Monument, become an evolving, ongoing work of art in and of itself. Lastly, I'd like for our conversation to be productive enough to be able to generate, I don't know, 3 to 5, I think we're being ambitious with 5, prescriptive ideas for artists and galleries looking to adapt to this changing environment we're all sort of pointing to. So, what kind of dealers do artists want? I mean, what's the ideal gallerist for an artist? I have some examples that may or may not work. Is that what you want for a dealer? I don't know how many people recognize this guy. Colin Deland. You worked with Colin. He's a legendary dealer who, like James Dean, actually, he died a little much older than James Dean, but like James Dean, he died young from cancer. I'll quote selectively from Roberta Smith's unusually long New York Times obituary. Colin Deland, a New York dealer whose ambivalence about commercialism was reflected in an art gallery that sometimes resembled an anti-art gallery, if not a work of conceptual art, blah, blah, blah. Died on Sunday, blah, blah, blah. With little display of exertion or financial solvency, Mr. Deland oversaw galleries in different art neighborhoods for nearly 20 years. He was known for his relaxed work habits. Mind you, think about that when we're talking about what you want dealers to do. And even more relaxed art installations, which did not all open on time, as well as an insistent sartorial style that presaged the white trash look. At times, he exhibited fictive artists like John Dog, whose work was widely assumed but never confirmed to have been made by Mr. Deland and the artist Richard Prince. Mr. Deland was born in Union City, New Jersey, blah, 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 blah. He backed into art dealing when, while living on the Lower East Side, he offered to sell a Warhol painting for a neighbor who needed money for drugs. In the heyday of his East Village art scene in the early 1980s, he had a gallery called Vox Populi in a former butcher shop on East 6th Street. But he had his greatest impact after he relocated to the relatively quiet southwest area of Soho in 1988 and evolved American Fine Arts, a gallery that functioned as an art world laboratory, hangout, and refuge. In largely unrenovated spaces at 40 and then at 22 Worcester Street, he gave shows of cutting-edge artists whose interests ranged from the large-scale installation to institutional critique to video to abstract painting. They included Katie Nolan, Jessica Stockholder, Marika Mori, Alex Bagg, Peter Fend, Rainier, you showed there in some group shows. He also showed work by the filmmaker John Waters and by Art Club 2000, a collective formed by students at the School of Visual Arts. He also started the Armory Show. It's important to note. And once allowed an artist to close the gallery for a month to protest art commercialization. So, okay, that's one model, right? Here's another model. This is Joe Amrin. I don't know how many of you guys know him. There you go. Course. Yeah, you know. I'd be curious to see how many of the non-New York crowd know him. This is Joe and Barry, his dog. Joe is the sort of quintessential Williamsburg gallery dealer. He is so quintessential, in fact, that he actually stayed in Williamsburg and didn't leave, like Ed did, and frankly, I did as well. The not-so-secret secret about this panel is that I also was an art dealer. This is Confessions of an Art Critic. I was once an art dealer.
Roebling Hall.
Roebling Hall was my gallery, and we started out in Williamsburg. But we moved, and Joe stayed. And Joe is a guy who has a significant social mission to his gallery in a neighborhood that he's committed to. So much so that he does, I think, on average, about 40 studio visits a week. I know that sounds incredible, but he does. He actually has a wall that people go up and sign up at. And he basically goes straight down the list and goes to all those studios, again, on a weekly basis, while he's running his 2 spaces. There used to be 3 spaces because he had another space in Leipzig. He also pioneered something called the flat files, which essentially gave gallery representation in the way of drawings and photographs and small-scale work to a larger community of people that that he could accommodate otherwise in his 2 brick and mortar spaces. So again, he's a guy who defines his scene. Actually, it was very well defined here in this article by Harold Frick. And I'm not going to bother trying to pronounce the name of this German newspaper. But the center of the periphery, which I think sort of neatly encapsulates what Joe and Joe's gallery mission is about. The name itself of the gallery lacks a seriousness that is important. It was once called Pierogi 2000. In 2001, they obviously had to change it because it was ridiculous to keep calling it 2000. But a pierogi is essentially a Polish ravioli. And the reason it was named that is because it's located in this area where there's a lot of Polish immigrants. So it's not your double-barreled last name gallery in any way.
Not anymore, so the Poles are gone.
And then, here's another model, right?
A mugshot is what that is.
We managed to slice out the numbers from the bottom, so don't worry. So again, our own art polymath and multiple hat-wearing colleague. He has his own model, which he spoke to you about this morning. Having moved to Chelsea, it is remarkably close to that of Joe Amrin in that Ed basically has created a community, both through his blog, also through his art fair, clearly through his gallery, but also through activities at the gallery that go beyond doing simply exhibitions, right? And then we have the Troika. Now, these guys aren't usually this transparent. But we clearly have Larry Gagosian on the left, Mr. Sacchi on the right, and Leo Castelli, on the center, and Leo Castelli on the right. This photograph was taken predictively by John Pagazzi, who is heir to I think it's Renault, it's a French car fortune, and a Johnny on the spot if there ever was one. And something a photographer, and also a big collector, obviously. And I believe that's on his yacht or somebody's luxurious yacht in St. Bart's. Anyway, the model that they created, and I think we know quite well, is one that is massively influential at this point. These are the 3 guys whose overall influence really matches those of legendary art merchants like Joseph Veen, who obviously sold, America the European Renaissance, and Ambroise Vollard, who, aside from keeping Cézanne in food and drink, also helped market Parisian modernism. Larry Gagosian, Charles Sacchi, and the late Leo Castelli are to the art world what Warren Buffett, George Soros, and T. Rowe Price have long been to the financial markets. They're experts at picking art stocks in both the short and, as far as we know, long term. They have shaped an art market colossus. The current drift of popular admiration proves one indicator of this trend. I mean, we all admire them somehow. Unquestioningly, in fact, I think, for the most part. In our success-driven environment, Gagosian, Sacchi, and Castelli, Castelli passed away in 1999, but his influence lingers kind of like expensive cologne in a room, are currently unalloyed art superstars. When we look at this picture, we think far more than we do when considering grotty artists or of someone of, say, Mick and Keefe and Graham Parsons hanging out in Villefranche-sur-Mer. These guys have it all, right? They're sort of the Jay-Z's of the art world. I use this image to illustrate an art review column called Gods and Monsters in 2011. And the lawyers made my life impossible for about 2 weeks. Anyway, so having looked at these models, at these potential models, do we want more than this? Are there any of these artists, this goes to you, Jordi, and to you, Rainier, are any of these applicable, or any of these ideal? Would either of you say that if you had your druthers, that either Mr. Winkleman, Mr. Deland, or Mr. Gagosian would be the ideal type of dealer for you? And if so or not, why not? Rainier, what do you think? Who's ideal here? Is there an ideal?
Yeah, there is, but I would basically try to explain this differently.
Okay, go.
By simply showing you just briefly my biography, which actually shows you what a failure I am. Because where's the? Okay, we need to open the thing. I had to move some of my storage, and then I realized, wow, all these old works, and obviously, when you look at the biography, it's kind of interesting, and so I go back to the beginning, and the interesting thing is when you, how does this thing work? I click and then I move it down. Okay, just here.
You might just have to verbalize it. Man.
Yeah, I do it. So I just wanna. It's not even. I don't even have everything here, but it's interesting. I don't even have everything here. But my first show, I got it at Philomene Markers. What I wanted to say is actually, I showed 3 shows with Philomene Markers, which is Breed Markers today. I made more or less 2 shows with the guy who do Blumenpohl. I made 3 one-person shows also with Massimo De Carlo. Those belong to. I made 1 show with Per Skarstedt. These are all like big blue chip galleries,
or proto blue chip.
Yeah, and they all fired me. They all kicked me out,
So you weren't the ideal artist for them.
Yeah.
What's the ideal gallery?
So they all kicked me out, know.
Yeah.
And then I showed, and so it went on. So recently, but I give you also the other example. I showed some years ago with Alex Zachary Curry, which was a very fancy gallery. They only were open 2 years. I showed with Fruit and Flower Deli, which was also very successful. They opened like a year and a half. I showed, now I show again with a gallery, this Kai Matsumiya, who just opened. He's not even 30 years old. Alex Zachary was 26 years old. And they come from Gavin Brown and so on. So what I wanted to say is, so if I look at my biography of showing, I only was able to show with people that were not older than 30 years old. So basically, you could go back to this. At least since I'm not allowed to show here any of my own work, as an artist, I'll show you at least the website.
So, then you need an older gallerist.
No, I don't
Right?
need an older gallerist. That's the question. So the question basically is, the fact that I was economically, the fact that I was economically a failure, was that good or is that bad? Because what's interesting in this entire thing, so I do actually believe, like Alex Zachary, who is now 28, he works at Green Naftali again, they gave up, and Curry works with Daniel Buchholz, that they will eventually become big dealers. The guy I'm working now, Kai Matsumiya, he just opened and already is invited to Art Basel, will also do very well. And so all these young dealers, they do well, but by the time when they then do, when they move into an economic segment where they kind of exceed, they kick me out, And that's kind of the logic of this entire thing, So, and now the question is...
Let's extrapolate from your personal experience. Where's the short circuit happening?
Well, you have to ask them why they kick me out, but extrapolating from the repetition and all these things, I think it is economic.
Yeah,
you
okay.
know. But the fact it's economic, for me, so I'm a failure on that level. But on the other hand, I had I had the chance and the choice and the opportunity, and also just the nonchalance to just do what I did
Right.
and keep
right.
doing what I did.
Well, but in that sense, maybe someone like Castelli would have been sort of an ideal dealer for you because of the loyalty issues that we were sort of coming up with before. Right?
Yes, I think so.
You know, somebody who would have stuck with you through thick and thin, selling or not selling, he probably would have even bought work from you. He might have even put you in a stipend. So, you know, unfortunately, either that guy isn't around, or you haven't found him, or maybe it's possible that model is no longer as applicable, or you know, or is existent today. Jordy, what's your experience? What's your ideal?
Well, I can tell you just a bit later. I think my case is opposite to yours. I'm faithful to my first gallerists, which are some of them not very old. One of them is very old. It's one old lady. Is one of the oldest ladies. One of the first galleries in Spain. And
I was
still
faithful. They kicked
like
me out. It's not
No,
the other
okay.
way around. I'm faithful.
Juana
No.
Espuru.
That's when I put in
Yeah.
Madrid, which is still a very alive gallerist, hopefully for a long time. I was looking for a word to trying to answer to the question, to the main question, what the artists want from their galleries. I was trying to just answer with just one word. And the word it came in Spanish, so
I'll
it's
translate.
complicidad. But I tried to translate it, and of course, when you translate, there is always problems. I think that the problem with the translation here is interesting because in Spanish has the many meanings, but if I understand in the right way, in English you should say the mutual understanding
Yeah.
or something like that. But there is also the complicity. So
Which that's
I just
somewhat legal.
found
shady.
a comment on the difficulties of the translation, which I think is quite interesting. They said complicity is somewhat more or a ratified word, at least in American English, than accomplice, with which everybody is familiar. For example, police have arrested one suspect, but believe he may have been working with an accomplice. That is the most common usage. And we will never use complicity in a serious situation in which we didn't wish to raise negative connotations. You will not say, for instance, we hope for the future of great complicity between our business. It sounds like you are planning on doing illegal things together.
Yeah, the Attorney General doesn't want to see that press release.
So in Spanish, the people use complicidad, and it always seems to be like being in a little bit naughty. Or as an equivalent expression goes, that has both literal and playful connotation. They are acting as partners in crime. Perhaps they are. So maybe in this context, this connotation in English is also about
It
what
works. Right.
complicity is between artists and galleries. I think it's somewhere related to crime somewhere.
Well, that's a great idea. That a certain kind of complicity, a certain kind. Well, what was the other way you put it?
The
Mutual understanding.
mutual understanding.
The mutual understanding, a regime of mutual understanding, is sort of is an ideal thing we want to shoot for in terms of the artist-dealer relationship. What else? What are your first thoughts about all this, Ed?
I have to say that
Mutual understanding, is that even possible? Sort of.
no, I'm
Is
in
it
love
a
with
relationship made up more of misunderstandings than it is of mutual understandings?
not when it's good. I'm in love with this idea that it's complicity. And when I think about my favorite moments in being a dealer, it's when me and one of the artists are truly sort of sitting there thinking it's us against the world. We are completely complicit in what we're trying to do. And I think there's, fun, adventurous thing that goes alongside that. But I think it's kind of reminding me of one of the blog posts I did where a dealer who had shown an artist for like 5 shows in a row saw the new body of work and told the artist that she didn't love that new body of work. And the artist went absolutely ballistic and was very, very upset that the dealer wasn't supportive of the new body of work. On her point of view, she was really doing her job, which was to be honest and sort of say where she thought this work wasn't as good as the previous. The artist saw it as a complete betrayal. And so the idea of complicity or just mutual understanding kind of transcends, when everything is good. And I think it comes back to this notion of trust on both sides. Maybe that artist was right. Maybe that was the best work he had ever done, and a dealer needed to listen to that. Or maybe the reverse was true, and the artist needed to listen. So just as you were talking, I was just going back to that story and thinking that there's a bond, or there's this dialogue between the two that really kind of makes all the rest of the market disappear.
Okay, but does it though? I mean, that's just the thing. I mean, I love the romance that we've sort of like landed on, but we know that in this time in particular, that romance, it ain't getting us very far. I mean, it's the ecology of the art world, a thing that Kilo Benito Oliva talked about as the art world system, is increasingly about money and being successful at basically sort of roping together money. So where does that take us in terms of sort of the artist-dealer relationship? I as much as I want to talk about trust and complicity and mutual understanding, I also want to talk about percentages. I mean, should dealers get 50% of artists' winnings? And if so, well, then let's talk about why that's reasonable.
Often they get much more because the dealers don't pay. And you know yourself, how hard it is to pay artists,
Yeah.
And
so you mean sometimes I get 100%.
Yeah. No,
right.
and sometimes I get exactly.
Okay, well, so there you go. So one ideal thing that artists want from a dealer is somebody's going
to be paid.
Effing pay him, right? Because that is a bona fide issue. So what else?
I think, another thing that artists want from galleries, or not from galleries, they just want is to produce art. So to have the way to produce art, and galleries can help to produce art, selling artworks or producing artworks.
Right.
And maybe this is I think the question for the galleries right now. One of the big questions is. They stay in this old model, just trying to sell products that are made by the artists, produced by the artists, and they has nothing to do, not involved at all at the way the works are produced, or they try to be involved in producing works, not just the gallery paying the production, but maybe involving collectors or involving other people to not just buying things, but producing things. So it's just one question. I work mostly in video and photography. The productions on video are very easily expensive to produce, so I need to. I'm quite lucky. I'm often invited by public institutions to produce a work, and the gallery is trying to sell it. But sometimes you feel like you are alone in this, looking for the production items, and the galleries. So I think the galleries should be more involved in this production.
But I would say, at least in my case and the way I work and think, it's what I would really appreciate, and is that you navigate this ecology together. It's not just about selling. In fact, selling is almost secondary. I think it should come as a byproduct. But it's a very complex world, of relationships, of friendships, of critical, receptive community, building up, networks where you kind of establish a context. And then I do think at one point when you have that, selling will come, and I'm not talking about short selling, I mean, there's a lot of short selling in that sense, if I may use a technical term in the wrong way. But so I think that support is important. Also, like, for example, in fact, I never expected selling, but the fact that I was associated with those galleries helped me anyhow. And in retrospect,
What do you mean, like clout and
yeah,
resources
no, I
that
mean,
are
like
not
just
financial
the
necessarily?
fact, let's say you show with this gallery, your status immediately looks different, improves. You get
Curators
taken,
get interested.
yeah, you get taken more seriously, and so on and so forth, which helped. Even if they didn't do anything for you, they didn't do anything, but it's still part of this kind of ambiente.
Yeah.
And but needless to say, in retrospect, having had the experience of so many galleries who, when they sold, I didn't get paid. Looking at some of the works I got back from the galleries who just moved on, at least I have the work, because as I get, what I couldn't really say, either they went bankrupt or they kicked me out, but that kind of opposition.
Right.
I keep having.
Speaking of the sales aspect of this, where do art fairs sort of fit into this? I'm wondering. I mean, obviously that's where galleries are increasingly going to sell. I actually had a conversation with somebody at Zerner last week, and they said it was 20 fairs that they're going to.
Because they make all the money only there.
Nuts. What? Say again? But yeah, they're making their overwhelming.
Particularly
amount of
European
money.
galleries make it mostly on.
I think American galleries as well.
Yeah.
But so how does that affect your relationships to galleries? Do you want a gallery to? I mean, first of all, does it affect your relationship to the gallery? Do they make you? Do they ask you for more? Do you feel more pressure? Do they make you? Exactly. They put your head underwater and they demand that you do it. They waterboard you. No. But does that affect the balance somehow? Those expectations that you have to produce for art fair after art fair. Does it affect the work that you make? Do you want your galleries to go to more fairs or less fairs, or, in Winnie the Pooh language, just the right amount of fairs?
You go first.
And at some point, you need to get in and just speak from,
I will.
the other side of the.
No, I'm going to, really quick before you get to the fairs, follow up on what you said. I hear this from every artist. What they want more than anything else in the world, even aside from their dealer, is the ability to be in their studio and make their work.
Right.
And whether that's time or whether that's money, that's what they want from everybody in the art world. But the other thing that they want is an opportunity for people to see the work in a context. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean a commercial art gallery. It could be a museum or any other space. So it's just, what you said it. You want the ability to make your work. I think it all really kind of wraps up in that one idea.
Right.
So I think if we still believe in the exhibition in a space, in a physical space, as the history of exhibitions still has a sense. The galleries has a sense, so the physical galleries has a sense and has his own audience, and audience is also that artists want from the galleries. The main thing with the fairs, I think, is that very often the quality of the exhibition is lost because the commercial obsession is there. And I know that there's many fairs that try to do shows of good quality and organize group shows and panels and many things. In Spain, for example, one of the main problems has been that the Arco Fair in Madrid, before in Spain were museums or art centers, was this art fair, which was created by my gallery in Madrid, by the way. But this fair was the only place in where art happened at that time, and at the beginning of the 80s, before the creation of museums and everything. So I think in Spain still this obsession that the art fairs has to be everything.
Well, curiously enough, I mean, Arco, I remember back in the day, almost worked like a biennial.
Yeah.
You know, it had a huge sort of public presence, much more than I have ever seen in any other art fair in any other part of the globe. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, I just sort of wanted to translate that experience. So, but has that changed for you? Are you
I personally, I don't like fairs. I don't go to the fairs very often. I don't feel like it's there that I will see the works the way I like to see the works. But I understand, for example, in the Spanish context, but also in the French context and in the context I know in Europe, all the galleries are now selling the majority of the works in art fairs.
So it enables you to do what you want to do, which is to make work in your studio or out in the world, right?
Well, I want to produce and to show.
Right,
Yes,
right,
of course.
Right. But is there a number of fairs that is unhealthy and a number of fairs that's healthier? I mean, if we accept this thing, you know, the proliferation of art fairs as this sort of necessary evil, just a tool, you know, is there sort of like a magic number? I'm not talking about the specific one, but, you know, would you want one
For example,
to do 20?
I think there are some Spanish galleries here. They can say, I think they survive now because of the art fairs.
But what
They're
about
selling in other countries?
But what about for you? And does it affect the quality of your work? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
exactly, the production.
Well, the main thing for personally, if I talk about my personal experience, is that since many years now, I've been producing mostly video works, and I found the way to produce and to be paid a little bit and to survive with that, without selling, or if the galleries are selling, so much better. But I'm trying to not to depend in 100% on this commercial system. Let's say.
Right.
So I think that question answers itself, because and that gives then also again the other way around, whether I like it or not. Yes, I do like it, as many as possible, but on the other hand, I also, to a certain degree, fear it, because on an art fair, it becomes very obvious whether you sell or not. That means a gallery, it's just like with the galleries, you know, they take it to 3 art fairs, you know. If you sell on 3 art fairs, they take another 10 art fairs. But if you do not sell after 3 art fairs, you're not going to see an art fair anymore, you know. And that's exactly what happens with the galleries and so on, you know. So love ends where nothing moves, and in that sense, you know. And so it's not like whether you like it or not. Concerning whether I ever make art just for, let's say, an art fair or a specific event, you know, which I wouldn't do otherwise, I don't think I do this. And I don't feel any pressure whatsoever to do something. I mean, I never have that problem. And I think not, again, if you are a selling out artist and you do paintings which take like one piece to make 3 weeks, then, and you sell, then you have a problem. Yes, then you need the waiting list. But when you are the kind of conceptually oriented artist, you know, who can actually work, you know, in all kind of ways, you know, I have sometimes exhibitions where 15, 20 people work on work. So I can produce if that, you know, like if that is...
and your work might be auditioned as well.
Yeah, there's so many ways to generate work, but it's the market that controls it. So in a way, you know, back to the first question is, you know, a certain degree of failure is very important for an artist. You know, I think that failure is actually the medium of success here, you know, and not the other way around.
So it's room to fail? Is that what you
Well,
want?
yeah,
from your
just
Very
reading?
like
good, actually.
moderate failure, I think is such the best thing that can happen to an artist,
Right.
because you never get into the position where you sell out and then wow, I don't sell anymore, and that's the end of it. So you know, for me, you know, I just don't give a shit whether I sell or not, whether they kick me out. In fact, it's interesting. All the people, I'm only laughed until 30 years. You know, there's this Dutschke sentence, Rudi Dutsch, don't trust anybody over 30. It's so true.
For dealers in particular.
Yeah, because they are very idealistic, they love your work. And for me, the best honor, let's say, if I'm asked, I think the most important thing for any artist is to define what is success for himself by himself.
Very good.
And not by whether you sell, whether they love me, whether they show me, whatever. You know, you need to find yourself what is. And I come more and more to understand that actually the fact that I still get invited by very young dealers, that they want to show me still, even if they know how bad I sell, and even if I posaun it here, like even if I broadcast it here,
Right.
that I cannot be sold properly. And actually, when Kai, you know, Matsumiya, a novice, you know, in the business, you know, showed me, all the dealers came to him and whispered in his ear, you know, you will never be able to sell Ghana. You know? We got a New York Times review, you know, and we got a project at NADA now, you know, but you can never sell Ghana, you know.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing, and in a way, it's almost good.
I think for conceptual artists in particular, this question of what do you want from your gallery is much more complicated and interesting. I mean, for somebody who's got a waiting list for paintings, what they want from their gallery is pretty straightforward. So, but sort of your experience, do you want a gallery to be effective past the age of 30 for you, or?
No, I don't. I mean, the age thing, you know, there have been also exceptions. The age, but it's just so interesting that what happens, let's say, when you're a young gallery, you know, you open a gallery, you know, and you're in for it, really for the art, you know. At one point, you know, you move up I mean, it's a generational question. Also, you know, the curators die, the museum directors die, and so there's a generational thing. It's just like a passing of power.
But
so
as you get
as it goes up, you know,
your expenses go up
in
too.
relationship, exactly. So in relationship to like Massimo De Carlo, when I made the first show, I was introduced to a young guy, Maurizio, who couldn't speak a word of English, Catalan, and so we became friends there and so on. And they showed me some work, you know, the one with the football, the rouse, and I said, you know, and I was supposed to like it, you know, I did not, but anyway. Because I thought it's too stereotypical. Anyway, and so, you know, and then I got to, but at that moment where Maurizio sells for the kind of money and so on, you know, why working with Canal? Why working with Canal when you can, you know, when these others and sell, you know, it's just very logical. And the same goes with all of them.
Well,
You know,
Go on.
they never said, I hate you, you know, but he says, they say to you, quando si parla di più di te, like if people speak more about you, I will show you again, you know, but it doesn't happen, you know. The same goes with many other of these, I mean, the list of places I showed is.
So let me ask you then, I mean, does Rainer Gnell, does an artist, or Maurizio Catalan for that matter, because he's so successful, do they need an art gallery?
Yes,
And I'm not just
of
talking
course, of
brick
course.
and mortar art
Yeah,
gallery.
yes, you do. I mean, any medium is good, you know. But of course, you, in a way, I mean, my way of doing, you know, like the project I showed, El Mundo, was completely without any support, without any institution, and it's kind of very successful. It's shown everywhere, but still, you know. What I did is basically in Spanish Harlem there's gentrification going on, and a shop, like a discount shop where they sell for $2 things or 99 cents, you know, shop. I discovered it was an old theater, an opera house kind of, and then when I saw going out of business, I had the idea, wow, I want to recreate the original grandeur, you know, the splendor of the old days, and I organized a classical concert in there. In all the trash, you know, I rented all by myself. I got then support from Vi Columns. They send it through their mailing list. And so I made one evening and a classical concert. They had the best,
Fantastic.
you know, from Juilliard School of Music. They had got the opera singers, and we put in between, so everybody was standing, you know, with all the staffs, and you know, I did it all by myself. So even
So you did need the architect.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
no,
just
yeah,
it,
I
you
did.
didn't.
In this case, I did not.
Right.
I use it as a film set. I filmed the event and I
Okay.
make then artwork.
Because there are a number of people basically sort of coming up really over the last 20 years I mean artists who have sort of dispensed with the gallery system, and they produce and agent themselves and, you know, get the monies when they need to basically sort of do a large scale production, and then decide sometimes to work with galleries the same way they would work with other institutions on a project by project basis. So why not that model?
I work
know?
with anybody who asks me.
Okay, well, good.
I have no problem, except
Yeah.
I never have been, let's say, used in the same. Nobody
Yeah.
invites me just for my name. That hasn't happened yet. So
Well,
I
you
never
know,
had that problem.
but what
Usually people who work with me, they understand my work and therefore I work. So I work with artists who do in a closet. I
Right.
worked with artists who have no name, no nothing, and I do projects with them if I
Well,
like
see,
it.
but I mean, you know, some people might think of that as like promiscuity, right? but there's another side to it. You know, Robert Storr has this great line that you know he unloaded on me once, and he said he especially likes artists who are foxy within their own aesthetic. I really love that line. They're foxy within their own aesthetic. They basically they define their aesthetic, and their aesthetic doesn't stop at the door to the studio. It extends out into the world, and they figure out how to basically surf all these stresses that we're talking about, and how to basically sort of situate. They take the extra responsibility to situate their work just so.
But I think the most important thing is
And it seems to me that if that happens, then possibly the gallery doesn't exist.
There's another very, very important aspect, because we talk about money. I think money doesn't matter. Success in that sense doesn't matter. But what really matters, and I think that's the crucial thing, and that at least keeps me going, is that it needs to make sense. The work somebody does needs to make sense, at least for the artist. And it needs, of course, to make sense and for the kind of ideal audience he speaks to. You know, and that's also very important. Like, say, a lot of my art practice, for example, studying foreign languages over 25 years as part of my artwork, actively doing this and still doing it, is something that makes sense also outside the art world. You know, or let's say when this series of photographs called Seminar Lecture, which was actually shown in Robert Storr's Venice Biennial, where I photograph talks like this, and it's now like over 20 years old. It ages actually better than I do. These photographs, they just interest. It interests me. I can go to universities. I can listen to people talking, and that's kind of something I like. So it generates sense. This work, learning, or the pedagogical work I do, generates sense outside any kind of commercial or not commercial, you know, showing or not showing context. And I think, in a way, you have to live with it. And before I was asked about the money, the reason, you know, people say, what should they do when they cannot sell? I think the most important thing by a young artist is to set up, to figure out a way to survive without any expectation to ever make a penny from the art itself. Then you are really truly independent. You have to learn that. You can become a Wall Street trader. You can go into real estate. You can do all kind of things, you know. You can be a pimp if you want, you know. But just don't expect...
That's being foxy within your own aesthetic.
Yeah, you just don't expect money from the artwork, because then you have a problem.
Right. Well, you mentioned something before that I think is really good, and maybe that could be sort of a third takeaway, that what galleries can really help do is to help an artist find an audience.
Yeah, that's what I said, the context,
exactly,
the ecology.
Yeah, no, totally, because, and that's a tough thing to do.
The critical reception in that sense, that's for me much more. The New York Times review is more than if somebody wires me $20,000.
Right.
Well, I mean, $20,000, you know, you can go and do day trading.
Right.
Or gambling, horse betting.
Related to that,
Are you gambling?
No, I don't do
a perfect model. I don't know. I'm just coming back from Norway, where I spent 1.5 months. invited by very young artists and architects that has a collective and a space where they make shows. And they invite me to make a show, but I said I don't feel like showing all things. Why we don't try to make a production there? I never been in Norway. I said that's great. Let's do it.
You have money.
So what they proposed me is not to show in the regular space they run, but they ask. There is a parking lot from the 60s, a very nice building, a huge building, 4 stories. And they asked the owner to let that space to make a show. They start to ask for a little money to the municipality. When they get the money from the municipality, the state say okay, because the municipality is saying yes. Then so we got a little money to produce something, and we did a great show. I'm really happy. The perfect thing will be after that that they are selling also the work, and this will be the perfect galleries or something like that. And with the idea also that not to be in the possibility to change the space of and to be a bit flexible also with that.
No, and you got to produce it. You got to produce a large-scale work, which is fantastic, right?
I wonder if I can pick up on the idea of the perfect gallerist, though, because one of the things that Marat is very good about asking artists who are having shows in the gallery is, if you could get X, Y, or Z out of this show, what is more important to you? And every single artist will say, I want all 3. And yet they don't necessarily realize that some of the choices they make actually lead toward one or the other. An example might be an artist who makes like 20 paintings and then decides those 20 paintings are a single installation, and the only way you can sell that is as a single installation. That artist has made a choice that press is more important to them than sales, even though they would be happy if it would sell. But within the reality of the world, they've chosen press over sales because they're more likely to get written about it as a single installation than you are to sell it that way.
Yeah, I know an artist like that now. He's made a bunch of paintings about the Holocaust, and he's actually done quite well and doesn't need money, and he doesn't want to sell them piecemeal.
Right.
For obvious reasons, because it's not the kind of thing you want to visualize over like a collector's couch in the Upper East Side. No offense to the Upper East Side, which is really good. But yeah, you know.
So, I mean, the idea of the perfect situation, sure, we all understand it's not exactly reality, but it's just,
I mean,
you make choices
it's a kind
that...
of joke, of course, but I mean, this people is really very young. They're 20-something. So it's maybe one of the reasons why they risk things like that. But why not the galleries should be as flexible as the artists run spaces? So to get from many different, to imagine different ways to make projects.
Now there's an idea, because if there's a crisis in the middle market, right, that we've been talking about most of today, I have this pet theory that the middle market is basically exactly like the middle class, the larger economy. And what happens in the middle class? Aside from the suffering that's happening now and disappearing, innovation happens in the middle class. And I think innovation happens also in the middle market. So what tools can we how can we begin to conceive of this space that's being squeezed in more innovative ways from the artist standpoint, to rethink the issue of what, you know, middle market, when we say galleries, maybe we're talking about middle market galleries. How can they expand? How can they move? What is it they can do? When we talk about that, I think we also have to talk about a possible disequilibrium between galleries and artists at this point. I don't know if you see it, but it seems to be somewhat self-evident that artists are, I mean, clearly not powerless, but they're not the most powerful sort of player out there today. Yet in a comment string to, I think, a blog entry when you were promoting your first book, which you brilliantly did, you brilliantly published at the beginning of the recession in 2009. Somebody wrote, no art gallery.
Exactly right.
I think
Yeah.
that artists are very powerful. The question is when you say artists, it's just like market or money or poor or rich is all relative. But I can guarantee you, and I know it for a fact, that the majority of decisions by dealers is consistent with their artists, with the opinion of the artist. They ask other artists, you know. I mean, not every artist's voice is obviously the same, but and collectors, almost every collector that is like famous New York collector, all they did is permanently ask me, what do you think? What do you think of this artist? They do this. Curators, it's non-stop. It's always the artists who kind of whisper in the ears, who influence.
But you really
And
think that
not
that
all, not all the artists, but those who are listened to, and that
But
is
I don't-
permanently. Curators do it, museums people do it. They do it because, but of course, they go to those places that are chics. So for example, galleries that are successful, and I don't want to name now names, but for example, one in particular, it's interesting where in fact, where the artists, the dealers are almost like all the same, and it's a network, you know. When you look at the, it's fantastic work what they do, and the curators want to be part of that network, so they listen to all.
Listen, I totally agree
Do you
with
understand?
you. Well, in terms of sort of how to develop a stable, that
But that's not how they say it, yeah.
smart galleries basically listen to their artists, so they actually
course.
actively go out and they ask
Yeah.
their galleries, I mean their artists.
Of course.
But I'm not so sure that they're actually asking their artists about the rest of the day-to-day, how many art fairs to go to.
They ask.
How to,
Yeah,
how to,
I get
how
asked
to-
all the time. I
Do
get
you?
asked all the time. Should I do this fair? Do you want me to do that fair? Should we do this? Should we do that? All the time. I mean,
What do you think, Ed?
There's some of my artists I trust to ask
Yeah.
questions like that, and some of them who I know just aren't
of
paying
course.
enough attention to really have an opinion. But I think that the dealers are there to serve the artists and
Yeah,
serve the
yeah.
collectors. Serving both at the same time is the challenge. But we were talking about at dinner the other night. Artists,
Collectors and increasingly buyers, since they're occupying a larger area of influence as well.
yeah, I tend to think of collectors as being the people I work for, not the
Okay.
buyers necessarily. But you were saying that even as we're looking at new models and things, dealers need the artists to tell us.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you need
And
from us?
if you're a dealer, you're also stupid if you just take completely disparate people. You want to have a kind of a quote-unquote family. You know, you want to have a group of people that have something in common.
Let me ask
that
you about that.
support.
I know so many artists who do not care about the other artists in their gallery program. It's all about sort of their relationship with their
I-
dealer and whether this is a good context or not. I know so many artists who say, I don't like half the other artists in my
That's
gallery.
okay, but they still they don't have
Is
to
it true?
like each other. But it's often like this, you know, that there's a connection. I think it's important because what happens is, you know, it's all a kind of social networking in the sense that when you are a block, you know, when you come, you know, mention this name and it comes an entire array of like other artists and critics and then related galleries, you know, that's a very powerful and successful model. And when you look at the most successful, it's just about like who is connected with who. It's almost like a
Yeah,
Facebook.
But when
kind
you
of-
look at the most successful ones, I doubt Zwirner is really sort of like, I mean, I know for a fact, at least from a couple of artists that show Zwirner who I know, that, you know, they don't get asked who Zwirner is going to be brought on. I mean, who Zwirner is going to bring in. They, you know,
Yeah.
they're at a different level. That happens a lot at younger galleries. You know,
But even
30
Leo
to
Castelli's
40
gallery
years.
says like how one artist leads to the next artist, and so you see this is non-stop happening.
No, I mean, look, you look at the roster and you go, right, I identify what this gallery is doing, and therefore I know where these artists stand in the pecking order. But, I think...
But David did also in the beginning. I know exactly.
In the
David.
beginning, he
and
did.
he do call the artists of his father.
But he
Don't
doesn't
forget that.
anymore.
He doesn't anymore. But I do know
Is
that
he over
talks-
30? I'm just kidding.
David, I know.
He looks like he's, yeah, never mind. He's just perfect, so...
No,
I don't know, that's a good
David,
question.
David does. I do know, particularly. I don't want to. This is like hot territory. I don't want to name
Yeah,
names,
yeah.
but I do know, for example, some of his auditions, who he asked, who he talked to, how they talk. It's permanent talk, and the voice of the artist is incredibly important. I'm not saying
So then
it
there
has to
isn't
be
d-
all artists,
yeah.
but they always have the ear of a couple of artists they trust. Of course, you don't want to have the opinion of all your artists, but you know
You
know
can never
exactly with
synthesize
who
it all into an
Yeah,
action
can
plan.
work, yeah.
Yeah.
But you do not make decisions out of the blue. That would be, I think, suicidal. You know.
So then we don't have a disequilibrium. I'm misapprehending the
Well,
situation.
the point is, it's very difficult to generalize. It's difficult to generalize gallery and gallery. There are so many models. Artists, so many models, you know.
Right.
Of
Right.
course, the majority, I mean, even me, I meet an artist, the majority I don't want to actually meet, you know, because they just bore me. and all they want is some access or whatever.
Oh
you
man,
know,
all
like-
artists are exciting and they're all wonderful
yeah,
people.
but then there are artists you want, you know,
Yeah.
and so it's all. So I'm kind of exaggerate. Of course, I always love everybody in general, but I can, you know, it really depends. You just saying the word artist is a big difference whether you're dealing with let's say Jeff, you know. Or whoever, you know, there's such a big, you know, it's between the king,
it's true.
it's between the emperor and really a homeless, if you want to call it. It's such a large segment, so it's very difficult to name that. So when I say again, coming back, those influential people, even Gogolsen, they listen, they have their ear out, they couldn't do otherwise, and if not, their advisors do it. Their advisors do it. They have people. I know people from blue chip galleries in New York that get paid to just hang out in small galleries like where I show now to figure out what goes on. I know that for sure. You know, and I know they're secretly on bankroll.
I hope you're right, and I hope they really are listening to artists. I have my doubts, to be perfectly frank with you. But I think Conrado has very smartly come up and reminded me that we need to take some questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Rather than continue to blather on. I just saw Murat put his hand up. Does someone want to go and deliver that microphone?
But why don't we
I
ask
do-
Mr. Falkenberg? He's a big collector in Germany, and
Mr.
I think.
Falkenberg is interested in asking.
Yeah,
questions,
ask
and
him
by
the
all
question
means.
whether he listens to other artists, and I'm so sure that if he talks with the other artists, they talk about other artists, and he might influence his opinion. I'm so sure he does. Now we're having one of the best collectors in Europe. We should ask him.
But for sure, galleries
Or dealers, or
here,
other
I'm
dealers.
not,
the
I'm not
artists, of
suggesting
course,
that
and
artists are in any way powerless, but go on.
But they don't ask me necessarily.
So I have a question
Well,
for Jordi. You heavily express yourself about the galleries have to or should support and help you out with production costs, you know, with your work or with your projects, exhibitions. And I'm curious to hear your point of view. For example, if gallery supports you with your production, and if there's no market for your work, there's no waiting list, and gallery already investing in you, giving you a show. I mean, it depends on the location, like London, New York. It could be with all those real estate taxes, payroll, blah blah blah, could cost like $30,000 a month. Plus, on top of it, they will give you production costs. Would you think if you, and let's say your work doesn't sell, and there's an expectation somehow that you have to have second show in 2 years, that means the gallery, again, you know, coming out with some money from their pocket. Have you thought about like maybe giving the galleries the first edition that they own because they invest in you? Because
Yeah, of course.
you know, one day, for example, after first show, you decide like, hey, you know what, didn't work out. I'm dropping the gallery.
Right.
You have the work. The gallery doesn't have anything. And so I'm curious, what's your point of view on that? I mean, from the other end.
Well, of course, if we are talking about galleries, we are talking about market as the things are right now. If you are not selling anything, you are not on the market. That's cruel, but it's like this. So why the galleries has to produce a work for 20 years if it's not about the relationship between two subjects and there is some passion that you believe that this work has to be produced? Well, I think it's all this is also about subjects. So all the galleries are different. It's very difficult to say the galleries are like this. So they are all different. The collectors are different. Some galleries are also collectors. some collectors become gallerists, or so there are many different histories. Artists would become art critics or curators, or so why you decide to invest in something, or not just with your money? It exists, this model also, the galleries who has a lot of money and can just give money to the artists, but well, it's not the model maybe. But how is it possible to convince the collectors or the producers, so the other people, to make works possible? This model exists already. So many institutions and kind of clubs of not just museums but collectors that want an artist to produce a new work, and they give some money, and they have rights on this work. Of course, they can have the number one on the series, or the rights for showing, I don't know. Of course, this is flexible. This is market, so you should agree with the terms.
My opinion about the production costs is it's always a terrible thing when galleries pay you the production and you don't sell, 80% end up in a big fight. So it's always a nightmare. And so I would advise to pay as much as you can, and at least you have some kind of control of the work. Otherwise, you will never see your work back. And I have non-stop, I have only those kind of problems, and I know so many other people where, and it can get very complicated when, for example, I remember, for example, again, very famous artist comes to Roger Pelas, where I showed he was very important at the moment in the early 90s, and he brought his girlfriend to Marseille, and then he had the hotel paid, but actually he himself went on to the Côte d'Azur and stayed in a hotel there, and then they produced whatever he wanted to have, and the guy kept paying, and then in the end he never got the work back, and it destroyed the relationship between he really ruined the relationship, not only as a dealer, ruined the relationship with the artists, because they're very influential artists, like he showed Jeff Wall, he produced the Children Pavilion and everything. It just everything got destroyed by this. So it's dangerous for the dealer to pay the production costs, so I should almost say don't pay. And please shoot me. And it's dangerous. It's not really very healthy for the artist too, because there is this bizarre limbo after it. At least try to define it. What happens? Because the problem is,
I should have listened to you when I was a dealer. Because
yeah. You own a friend of mine steal $30,000.
No, I don't.
I asked, well, your gallery which you left 3 months before it.
2 years before.
2 years, sorry, but it was.
But you had this experience as a gallerist.
Yeah, totally.
You have been
Absolutely.
Roblin Hall was one of the worst actors at the time. All my friends showed there, and they all owned a lot of money. But I asked. I have it on email. I asked today.
Okay, well, but well.
No, not you. I know it's
you.
Roblin Hall. Not him, but he was part of the gallery. He
I
ran
was.
it for
It's
time.
true. It's true. Any other questions before I'm sort of hung out to dry?
No, I think it introduces some reality. The reality is not just talk. The reality is really miserable. As an artist, they pull you over the table non-stop. I get cheated and stuff destroyed and stolen.
And you're still arguing that artists have more agency than
Yeah, they are. Yeah, but
let's get the story straight.
But you keep going to new galleries. Have you not learned anything?
I have no other choice,
You have many choices.
Yeah, but
I don't advocate any of the things that you're talking about.
But this is the reality. The reality is
the definition
really
of insanity is to continue to do the same thing over and over again.
To say artists have a choice and Jeff Koons influences Deitch does not mean the regular artist has anything to say. The regular artist has nothing to say. He's like a play ball.
Well, there you go. So then we were agreeing. So let's take another question. Thank you, Ellen.
Yeah, contracts do
Why,
sound like
why don't you try to make it work with maybe writing contract? Because society works in a way where there's not that many fights all the
It's beyond
time.
contract, the art world, you know. It's like everything is under the table, nothing is transparent.
But it doesn't need to be.
It doesn't
So,
have to be.
Artist, myself, biggest disaster, you know, we are stupid. It's really like, no,
No, but it doesn't need to be, clearly. I mean, you know, look.
I am.
You have what? I think regulation and
Stupid.
transparency is a good thing. You know, and yeah, I think contracts like price lists when you walk in, which is something that's very rare in New York. You know, you walk into galleries and at whatever tier, and you have no idea how much the work costs, and you're lucky if people tell you what the price is, you know, without actually sort of having to divulge your bank account statements. You know, someone else? Yes.
Yes, hello.
Yep.
Thank you for the talk. I have a question for the two artists. It's like, imagine a world that is no gallery. Do you know will it be easy for the good quality artist to show his works over the wall and to promote it itself? This is my first question. And the second question is, all the best artists are in the market or not? What happens?
what is best? What does that mean, you know? What is best? What's is best what's in 100 years around? Is best what's only today around? What sells the most? You know, there is, for example, an artist in Vienna. He's called Makart. You most likely never heard of him. But he was the most sold artist at the end of the 19th century into the time where you had Klimt. And he made all the 19th century buildings. They all had his work. Today, nobody knows him. What does it mean? You know, it's...
But there's a consensus that's arrived at as to whether people are important or not. And there probably are. In fact, I can think of one artist here in the city or in Catalunya who doesn't have a lot of market exposure and who's a terrific artist, Perejam. And he doesn't seem to exist on the regular sort of market radar.
Well, because it depends also. I'm here invited. I feel like a bit the local artist is why I'm here. So
Very global. artist.
I also feel displaced here. Because I don't...
I think every context is different. So the galleries in Barcelona, you have in one hand you have the good galleries in this city, and which are historically resisting since a long time and to the crisis and to the second crisis, and so is the people who's organizing this, part of them, or the others are around. So. The market here is like this, so you cannot live as an artist just with a gallery in Barcelona. I think selling to the people in Barcelona is why they go to the art fairs and they try to globalize the thing. But of course, you don't have the same. You are not exposed as an artist in New York, so you are not in the same level. So I think in how the art system is right now, you have to be in a gallery. It's difficult not being in a gallery and existing in the art world. You don't have to sell, but you should be in an art gallery, because it means maybe that. Somebody choose you with other artists, and maybe there are no selling the other artists, which are very important. I don't know. For example, my gallery to speak about names. My gallery in Paris was working with Alan Sekula, which was selling a bit in France, but so the main market was in France and was no market in the States. So it depends on the context and how the work is perceived. And
Right.
He sold very little work.
We have a question over there. We have 5
This one
minutes, so
back
I want to
here.
get I want to get to as many questions as I can. Gentlemen.
Rainer, I think you can have a great future. Look at Van Gogh; he sold nothing and he became famous.
Well, I like my ears.
You know, but who knows? If you don't have a gallery, what do you think of using, for instance, platform like Saatchi Online or other platform? Do you think an artist can survive without a gallery?
I think I just use my website, and when people really ask, I mean, I do actually get shown quite a bit, you know, in galleries also, but and I do have representation, but still, I do still think that most. Like my website, canal.info, and I have many websites, you know. One, for example, is called I Want to Be Chinese, or I Want to Be Alfred Jarry, or Please Teach Me Chinese, or Use a Bicycle, or ManhattanMarxism.com. I mean, I have lots of, the online presence is a lot of fun. In fact, I do feel like I show only on the internet, and my entire way of thinking is to produce actually for that kind of ideal community that looks at it, and it's really true. And in fact, I have now an idea for a gallery which I want to actually make, but I shouldn't really venture it all here. Maybe I should anyway.
Yes.
My idea, I'm working on that, but I would love to have somebody, because I don't want to do it, but somebody to create a gallery that that only consists online, but offers ideal situation where the curator dealer asks an artist with whom he works to choose any space in the world, any real actual space. Let's say you want to show a Zwirner, you go and photograph Zwirner space, and you Photoshop your work in there, you know. So they should make that ideal situation in those spaces. Do you know what I mean?
Fantastic, yeah.
You know, but
why
even
stop
as a,
there? Go to the
yeah,
Met.
but I'm an artist, but I would like to see that,
Yeah.
you know. So when that would like give idea. I mean, I want to say one thing, and it sounds as if I hate artists, and it might well be the case, but I myself have shown in blue chip galleries, for example, Max Protege. I showed before, every show sold out. Every show after mine sold out. My show, nothing sold. Only one piece sold. And I was like a stupid artist friend who went to the fucking gallery and wanted to get the love and the attention by the dealer, and he bought there. He should have bought from me, you know. But he went there, so I got not even any money, because he kept the money for the production costs, you know. And that was actually one of the dealer in terms of production costs who didn't want to have the problem like you usually have with the production. He just gave me all the work back and kept whatever he wanted to keep to cover the production costs, you know. And now in retrospect, I regret that. I should just pay those like $6,000 at the time for framing, but he kept like half the show. It's a pretty miserable business.
You've had more bad luck than most artists I know.
Right?
So it's not the dealer. Don't think it's the dealer.
I think we've got like a last question here. All right, we're going to do these two gentlemen. You first, please.
Question to the artists again. Let's say there are very, very roughly three types of galleries that work in the primary market. The first gallery is the emerging artist gallery, something on the Lower East Side, for example. There is a mid-career gallery that is fairly established, and there are the big tycoon galleries. Where would you like to be as an artist? And that's a question to both artists. Where would you like to be in these galleries? Do you want to be the established artist that is part of an emerging gallery? Do you want to be part of a mid-career gallery? Or do you want to be sort of the freak in the tycoon gallery? Or where do you see yourself in this whole, or an established artist, or in a tycoon gallery as well? I mean, I don't want to qualify this, just where, if you sort of look at the landscape of galleries that are reality, where would you think you would grow as an artist the best?
It's almost like asking, do you want to be rich, healthy, and young, or old, sick, and poor? You know, I mean, it's self-explanatory. Because obviously, I think I could do a very good job in the best gallery, but obviously I'm not making it there because they unload me before. But you know, it's obvious. I mean, if anybody says he doesn't want to have success, you know, I want to see that first. I definitely belong to the people who would, you know, go where you point, you know.
So, but
But-
why?
But-
Why?
but
Why
wait,
would you grow the best in the big gallery?
But wait, before you answer that, and before Jordy answers that, I know of at least a couple of instances in which artists have basically gotten that call from Gagosian and have gone there, and he's pushed the check across the table with lots and lots of zeros, and they've said no. So, you know, there's a lot of decision making that doesn't always go to the highest bidder at the very least. So anyway, either of you guys.
Well, then they choose between Zwirner and Gagosian, you know.
No,
I understand
no,
that.
no, that was definitely not the case.
No,
In-
man,
in
I
both of those
myself
cases-
am in the Lower East Side, beside the Lower East Side, Stanton, Kaimatsumia.
Right.
And again, a beginner, you know. I was the first show I opened the gallery, you know, and who knows whether they're going to be around in a year, you know. It's doubt. It could be, could not be. I mean, I will see. But obviously, what happens is this, you know. You imagine, and I do imagine this blue-eyed, that if I would have had that show at Zwirner, apart from the New York Times review, I would have be able to place the piece, you know. Now it's just in talks, you know, because we are in talks with the museums, but we don't have the leverage, you know.
Right.
And when you look at what they buy, you know, what goes, you know, what moves on, you know, it's always the same, you know. In fact, do you understand?
No, I
It's,
do.
And obviously, once you have these opportunities, you can do more things. I have 25 projects I would like to do if I had the money, or whatever,
Jordy?
and I can't do it. I don't have it.
Well, I think it's not really something that you can manage. No, it's like the film. It's all about Eve. You know, the first, for example, if you stay in the same gallery for a very long time, is not something that you can manage. That you were the first young actress, and then is another one who's coming, and you are the old one now, and the well-known one, and the medium career one, or the whatever. So this is like, I don't know, categories that you should try to live with that. I remember the first time that somebody says to propose me a show, and he says, as the Americans say, this will be a mid-career show. I said, mid-career? What it means?
Look at the birth date. I think the answer to this, the very, very ideal situation is actually that your young gallery, like your guy with whom you work, is actually making it all the way up, you know. So that's what you want to do. You want to have your entire scene move up, and that's happened. In fact, it happened to me too. I mean, Massimo, where is he today? You know, is top. You know, Tim Bloom, you know, very touch. I spent so much. We did a museum show in Tokyo. We did 2 shows in Los Angeles. We in Philomene, 3 shows, you know. Philomene Mages Brüt, you know. They're all that, but they don't work with me anymore, you know. And that's, you know, that's the need, you know. So I'm sure if that guy Kai Matsumiya goes up, you know, and he gets a lot of leverage now, you know, it might happen again.
Or they might kick you to the curb again. You don't know. The last gentleman there.
Yes,
I'll ask it
the name was mentioned of Van Gogh, but perhaps the gallerist have a Van Gogh too. In the 60s in Paris, there was the famous gallery Iris Claire. Iris Claire, the most advanced art gallery in the world. She had a truck in plexiglass. She discovered Fontana, Yves Klein, Les Nouveaux Réalistes. It was the beginning of the big business too. All the artists left for more galleries with money. I only like to say, she died in Paris very, very poor. I think it's of the both sides. L'engagement of an artist is important, and a gallerist, I think it's a little the same. We have to work together. There's nothing to do.
Thank you. Conrado, can we take one last one? Yeah. Thank you. Madam?
I think a gallery, an artist, you know, I am an artist and I am a gallery also, so I can understand you. So I looked at 2 sides. Should not be an idyllic relation, you know. And I think also with all the virtual possibilities, I try to look a relation with an artist like a business, and any kind of business needs a lot of marketing. A good artist is creative, had a good work, had good presentation, and give good material to the gallery to work. So in the moment that we don't look that so romantic, I think it will be much better and really look with respect and not waiting this idyllic situation that they are very difficult to do. So I don't know. So
Point taken.
it's everything.
I want to thank all you guys for being here. Thank the panelists. Thank Talking Galleries.